So yesterday we started with section 6 and then we started with section 7, 8, 9, 10, 10A, 11, 12, 12A. So these were the sections that we covered yesterday. So just a quick recap of that. So who can file application under section 7?
Financial creditor.
Financial creditor. Very good. So financial creditor, what does the financial creditor need?
Default.
Of course, the default is needed. So that was section 6, that default is needed. But financial creditor needs to do what? The default should be there, but after default, what is going to happen?
Apply to
Application to
NCLT.
NCLT, right? So
Yes.
straight away, the application will be made to the NCLT. Okay. Then, along with the application, what all attachments?
Details of record of default.
Okay. So details of record of default. Okay.
Name of the resolution professional.
Okay.
It's IRP.
So basically, our insolvency professional who will be proposed as a resolution professional, correct? So these are the two things which needs to be provided by the financial creditor. After that, NCLT will take how many days?
14 days.
14 days time. So within maximum 14 days time, right? So this is maximum 14 days time. NCLT will either
Accept or reject.
accept or reject. But before rejecting the application, NCLT may provide how many days time?
7 days.
7 days. May provide 7 days time to rectify the defect. Okay. So this is your section 7 for the financial creditor. All right. Now, as soon as the application is accepted, that becomes the date of
Admission of application.
commencement of
Commencement of CIRP.
commencement of CIRP. Admission तो इधर हो गया ना? Okay. All right. Then we studied section 8. So section 8, application to NCLT by operational creditors, correct?
Yes. sir.
No.
No. ये तो अभी वो डिफॉल्ट है कि नहीं और डिस्प्यूट है कि नहीं वो सब इसमें आएगा
Okay. So
पहले.
section 8 for the operational creditor. What is going to be the first step? After default, what is going to be the first step?
Demand
Demand
notice.
notice will be issued by.
Right. So the demand notice will be issued. What else? After demand notice?
10 days का वो वेट डिमांड नोटिस के साथ वो इनवॉइस भी दिखाएगा.
वो इनवॉइस ही डिमांड नोटिस है बेसिकली. दैट्स फाइन.
ओके.
So within 10 days time, payment or
और
proof of payment.
corporate हाँ corporate debtor must reply in 10 days of receiving demands.
Right. So within 10 days, either the payment or the proof of payment. Okay.
Yes.
Or there will be
No reply.
valid notice of dispute.
Yeah.
So in these three cases, no section 9. Otherwise, and what will come in otherwise? One is either
No
there is
reply within 10 days
or invalid dispute.
or invalid dispute.
In this case, now application to NCLT. This will be made under section 9. right? Correct.
Yes,
Now,
sir.
along with the application, what all things? 5. So what all things?
Demand notice
Okay, the copy of demand notice.
and application is acha,
Affidavit.
Correct. But for what?
verifying debt,
No. Affidavit for? After demand notice. No reply. Right? And thereafter, the copy of records by financial institutions, if it is maintained by the financial institutions, that will be given, right? Then basically there can be,
information utility that no payment is
right?
made by.
So either the copy of information utility, right, or any other proof of non-payment, right? Any other proof of non-payment. Got it? After that, the application will be admitted. The application will be admitted. Otherwise, the application will be rejected if it is complete. Otherwise, it will be rejected. Correct? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, how do you determine valid notice of dispute?
If dispute is
That exists.
arises by corporate debtor,
I think Mansi has used a better word.
okay.
If
Mansi,
the demand notice exists.
not demand notice, dispute.
हाँ, dispute.
So if dispute exists
Before demand notice is served,
before or at the time when demand notice is served, then we say this is a valid dispute. Okay. Now, can you provide me the difference between the application by the financial creditor and the application made by the operational creditor? What is the difference between the two? If you
Sir,
all can. Yes.
इन फाइनेंशियल क्रेडिटर में डेब्ट का मीनिंग अलग है और उसमें अलग है. Here डेब्ट
Of
मीन
course. But no. We are not discussing the difference between financial debt and operational debt. We are saying the difference between the application which is filed by operational creditor and financial creditor. What you're
Okay.
saying is correct, but just understand. Focus is on
हाँ,
what?
okay. Sir, here the financial creditor along with the application, he shall also file the name of the
So first and
result.
foremost, yes, that is correct. But first and foremost, we say that financial creditor can directly file the application. Yes or no? Right after default. But
Yes, sir.
operational creditor will first have to serve the
Demand
Demand
notice.
notice.
And after the demand notice, the application will be filed, right? Okay, what else? One was IRP, the name of IRP. Right, Sridevi ji has answered that here, in case of financial creditor, IRP must be proposed. And here it is, optional. Very good. What else? What else? Is there anything else that you could notice?
Sir, committee of creditors in case
Have
of
we studied about committee of creditors?
no, sir. Yes,
So how can, so based on what you have studied, I
So
want answer based on yes, yes.
इसमें डिस्प्यूट के बारे में कुछ भी नहीं है इसमें फाइनेंशियल क्रेडिटर्स के बारे में, और
Very
सेक्शन
important.
9 में डिस्प्यूट अराइज हो जाएगा तो
Here there is no
उसको
concept
प्रूव
of
करना.
dispute,
यस.
but here there is the dispute may exist, right? To make your application get admitted or accepted by NCLT, admitted by NCLT, how will you, what is needed? What is needed? Here only
Only two things.
the
default.
default plus the proof of default. The default must happen and you need to provide the proof of default. Here, default plus
Demand notice,
demand notice plus
affidavit,
affidavit for no dispute, right?
confirmation by IU if any.
Right. So basically dispute, and then you need to provide the proof of default. Make sense?
Yes.
Does this make sense? Right. So this is the provision.
और सर इसमें फाइनेंशियल क्रेडिटर्स सिंगली और जॉइंटली.
Very, very important. I think I also missed it. Very good. So financial creditor can filed individually or jointly. But here it is only individually. No joint application. अब बताइए. Does
सर,
this make sense? Yeah.
और जब ये फाइनेंशियल क्रेडिटर्स के रिस्पेक्ट में जब डिफॉल्ट होता है तो वो डिफॉल्ट इंक्लूड्स फाइनेंशियल डेट ओड नॉट ओनली टू फाइनेंशियल क्रेडिटर बट टू एनी फाइनेंशियल क्रेडिटर ऑफ कॉर्पोरेट डेटर.
That is with respect to filing of the application. That is fine. But broadly,
ओके.
1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. This is an important question for your exam. Okay. All right, let's go ahead. Then we have section 10. So what is section 10? In case of default, the application
कॉर्पोरेट.
by corporate debtor itself, right?
यस.
So this is application by corporate debtor itself. Just be careful whenever you use he, she, it, himself, herself, itself. Don't write corporate debtor himself. Okay. Company is not he, she. Company is it. Right. These are some minor grammatical errors, but then again, it looks very, it gives a very wrong impression. Okay. I'm not saying that this will reduce a lot of your marks, but certainly it will not give a good impression. So psychological disadvantage you are definitely going to have if you write all these things. Okay. So please be very careful when you write the answer for and especially your grammar. Okay. Anyway, so application by the corporate debtor itself. Now, what is needed? What is needed to file the application? The application can be
Default,
filed. Very good. Starting point is default. Then after default,
proof of default,
so corporate debtor has defaulted. Corporate debtor, does the corporate debtor need to prove the default?
no.
No. Then what does corporate debtor have to do? Provide the information, right, relating to the books of accounts. Yes or no? Provide the information relating to the books of accounts. Yes or no? Then,
Yes, sir.
but to file application, what is needed? You need a authority from your shareholders. So either you need to pass a special resolution or you need approval from 3/4 of the
Of
members,
total partners.
right? Partners. Okay. So not members, partners. Correct. And of course, they also need to propose the name of
IRP.
propose the name of interim resolution professional, and thereafter NCLT will accept the application. Okay. Then we did section 11. So what was there in section 11?
It was timeline?
Timeline.
No, no.
No, no. It is basically the person who cannot file the application,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So basically, who are the person who cannot file the, who are not entitled to make application? Person not entitled to make application. Who are these people?
Person in respect of whom the process is already
So who is that
on
person?
credit
किसके
or
किसके
debtor,
अगेंस्ट होगा?
corporate debtor.
हाँ, corporate debtor. So one corporate debtor who is already undergoing CIRP. Corporate debtor already undergoing CIRP, no need. You cannot
Corp
make the application. Then the corporate debtor
Better.
who had
completed
just
CIRP.
completed
Completed.
1 year
And
not elapsed.
12
Right.
months are
So
not.
completed CIRP plus 12 months have not elapsed. Okay.
Liquidation order जिससे file होगी.
So corporate debtor, basically in respect of whom the liquidation order is made. So corporate debtor in respect of whom, in respect of whom liquidation order has been made. Right. Then
Corporate debtor and financial creditor. Uh,
who
in
violated the
process
terms,
में, yeah, yeah,
not
got
process
it.
में, who have violated the terms of the
Terms of
resolution.
resolution.
So
Yeah, okay, sir.
right. So corporate debtor or financial creditor who violated the terms of the resolution plan, right, which was approved by NCLT, and how many days have not been made? So, and 12 months have not elapsed. Okay. So this is your section number 11. Then we did section 12. So what was there in section 12? Now this is timeline. Section 12 is the timeline. So what is the timeline?
One
What is the timeline for CIRP? 180
80 days.
days from the commencement of CIRP. From the commencement of CIRP, then
One time
90 day-
extension.
single extension
Maximum 90 days.
of maximum 90 days. Very good. And then you have a new thing here, so that things like SR still do not happen.
Yes.
330 days maximum. The
So
Overall.
overall 330 days,
Including legal
including time taken in legal proceedings.
legal proceeding.
Including time taken in legal proceedings. Okay. Then we did section 12A. So what is 12A?
Withdrawal.
Withdrawal of the offer. So NCLT may or NCLT shall. What is the correct word?
May.
Okay.
May.
NCLT may. How? Or rather, NCLT when?
Applicant
NCLT may permit the withdrawal of application if it is approved by
66% majority of COC.
66. No. One, it should be approved by the applicant, and second, 90% of the COC. Okay.
Yes.
This happened in case of Dalmia Cement. Binani Cement, Dalmia Cement. The
हम वहाँ
Binani
पे
Cement case.
एग्जाम में ऐसे
नहीं
एग्जाम्पल
नहीं
पुट कर सकते हैं,
नहीं नहीं नहीं,
इसमें नहीं ना सर.
not needed. I am telling you आपकी अंडरस्टैंडिंग के लिए, जैसे मैंने आपको बताया था. अब देखो ये लेक्चर जो है, मतलब जैसे आप अभी नोट्स वगैरह कुछ मेंटेन कर रहे हो, तो वहां पे आप साइड में लिख सकते हो बिनानी सीमेंट केस. बाद में आप बिनानी सीमेंट के केस का जजमेंट पढ़ सकते हो फॉर योर अंडरस्टैंडिंग. ओके. व्हाई आई एम टेलिंग यू ऑल दिस? Because I also know about it. That's the simple reason. I know about it, and I know about it because I was tracking IBC. Last 1 year, I have not tracked. I'll be honest. Last 1 year, I have not tracked IBC as much as I did in the initial 3 years. So from 2000 and from technically from 2017, 18, 19, right? I have tracked each and every case of IBC, every landmark judgment, whatever has happened. I have picked up, I've read the judgments, I've reread the judgments, I've spoken to the people, I've tracked the news. Some of the NCLT proceedings, I was personally present there because even I had a case, or sometimes just to listen to the proceeding, I had gone to NCLT. So I've seen how the cases have happened. Then I've also seen how the law has changed. Like Section 12A was not there. Section 12A came because of the Binani Cement case, where Dalmia Cement had already won the case, won the resolution plan, but then they were providing some 5,000 crores for a debt of 6,000 crores. But then Ambuja Cement, that's Kumar Manglam Birla, they made a backdoor entry and they said that we are ready to pay the entire debt. So allow the application to be withdrawn. So creditors were like, the preamble says the objective of IBC is to do the maximization of the value of the assets of the stakeholder. But are we getting maximization? Because if we go by IBC process, then we are getting 5,000 crores. And here we have some other person who has lost the bid in the IBC process. That person is giving us 100% of the payment. So who should be upheld? Now, this is again a case where, you'll have to again see, because one person will definitely be upset. So if you allow Dalmia Cement, then of course the creditors will be upset because they will not get 100% of the payment. But if you approve what the creditors are saying, then Dalmia Cement will get upset, because Dalmia Cement and even Ambuja, right, Aditya Birla Group, they all participated in the same process. At the end of the day, Dalmia won the process, right? They won the resolution plan and everything was done. So technically their resolution plan was better. So this was the case where again they said that at the end of the day, it should be the decision of the committee of creditors to decide whether or not the resolution plan should be approved or not, or it should be withdrawn or not. Then again, there was a long debate made that, this way, um, basically the tainted promoters will again come back. People will make a backdoor entry, which is again the main reason why IBC is here. So that's the reason you have this word, NCLT may. A program used to come on Bloomberg Quint. It's a business channel on YouTube. Insolvency Diaries. So that was a weekly program. So Insolvency Diaries was a very good source of learning, and CNBC TV 18 definitely the second source of learning. Economic Times and all those other magazines and newspapers, business magazines and newspapers were the third. So why I'm telling you? Because very soon you will get a new security law code, right, which is going to consolidate the four securities law. So when such law comes, see, IBC was new for everyone, right? But the only way I could grasp IBC provisions better was because I tracked that statute, right? I tracked the news, what all updates were there. So if you do that, you will be always at the edge. Okay, so had it been a face-to-face physical classroom, I would have actually shown you. I have some 5 to 6 Bear Act of IBC which is being printed, and each of the Bear Act is not, it's not that it's blank, it's scribbled. You'll find post-it, you'll find multiple colors that I have used to point out cases. Then again, when the amendment happened, I have again used some different color to highlight those amendments. Then I've written the case laws, I've tracked the judgments. So this is a very good way to learn the law, right? So of course, this actually helped me, and that is the reason I'm now the visiting faculty for the law colleges for IBC, right? Practically, if you see, I haven't handled many cases of IBC, right? I am not a RP, but the knowledge of IBC and everything, I'm consultant to one of the firm also. So that's the benefit you get if you track the law. Okay, so that's the reason I share all these. Read those judgments, you will definitely get it. Right. Let's go ahead now and let's start with section number 13 today. So what is going to happen now? I am going to explain you. But before we go ahead, I'll again take you back to the slide where we were there yesterday, and then we are going to read the provisions. So we know that the default is going to happen. After that, the application will be made. The application can be made by the financial creditor, operational creditor, or the corporate debtor itself. After that, NCLT may accept the application, and that is the deemed date of the commencement of the CIRP. Now, what is going to happen? NCLT will make sure that a public announcement is made. The IRP will be appointed, right? The appointment of IRP is going to happen. Public announcement is going to be made, and then this moratorium is going to start. So what does this moratorium means? Moratorium is basically a time period where there will be a legal stay on all the cases, right? Ongoing cases, there will be a legal stay. So this moratorium is going to start, and then this interim resolution professional is going to form the committee of creditor. Right now, who all are going to be in the committee of creditor? I'm sure all of you must be aware of that, or at least most of you must be aware of that because you have studied it before. But just understand, we'll discuss who all are going to be there in the committee of creditor. Then this committee of creditor will be formed. Then this committee of creditor will have their first meeting of the COC, right? This is also called as the COC. The first meeting of the COC is going to happen where I said the interim resolution professional will be appointed as RP or a new RP will be appointed. And thereafter the meetings and all are going to start. So today's lecture will just focus till the committee of creditor is formed. Okay. Thereafter, we know that the information memorandum will be prepared by the resolution professional and all those things are going to be there. But today our focus will be till here, right? So let's go ahead and read it from here from the Bear Act. So what does it say? It says that section 13, right? Section 13, it says that declaration of the moratorium and the public announcement. Now, when the application is filed by the financial creditor or the corporate debtor, the name of the interim resolution professional is mandatory. But in case of operational creditor, it's optional. So what if the operational creditor has not proposed the name of IRP? Then what is going to happen? If the operational creditor has not proposed the name of IRP, then what is going to happen?
NCLT.
Then
Educating authority.
NCLT is going to consult IBBI,
Yeah.
and then IBBI is going to propose the name of the insolvency professional who is going to act as the interim resolution professional, right? And that interim resolution professional will again continue to do the work whatever we have just discussed right now. So just see, the adjudicating authority after admission of the application under section 7 or 9 or 10 shall order for a declaration of the moratorium, then cause a public announcement for the initiation of the initiation of the CIRP, calling for the submission of the claim. So just understand, what is the objective of this public announcement? The objective of this public announcement is for the world at large that listen, this corporate debtor is undergoing a CIRP. So if you have any amount which is to be claim, if you have any claim from this corporate debtor, please get in touch with the interim resolution professional and submit your claims. Okay. Just last week, I read one order where it said that once the resolution plan is approved and later on some creditor comes stating their claim, that claim is gone now. That is not even time barred, that is gone. You cannot make that claim later on once the resolution plan is approved. Okay. So just understand, the objective of this public announcement is to make sure that the claims are being received, and this is a message to the world at large that this company is undergoing or the corporate debtor is undergoing a CRP. Then appoint an interim resolution professional in the manner as laid down in section 16. So that's where I said either the name is proposed or the NCLT is going to consult the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India so that an interim resolution professional is appointed. Now this public announcement will be made by the interim resolution professional right after his appointment. So after his appointment, within 3 days, right? Within 3 days, the time period is also given, and that's given in the regulation. Okay, so you don't have to worry about that. So this public announcement will be made. I will also write refer slides. Okay. So you will also have to refer the slides because I'll make you write in brief what all is going to be there in the public announcement. Thereafter, moratorium is going to start. So subject to the provisions of subsection 2 and subsection 3, on the insolvency commencement date, the adjudicating authority shall by order declare a moratorium prohibiting all of the following, namely the institution of the suits or continuation of the pending. So basically, if there is any suit which is pending against the company, that will get a stay, automatic stay. Then transferring or encumbering, alienating or disposing of the assets of the corporate debtor, again there will be a stay on that. Even action against SARFAESI, action against the corporate debtor under SARFAESI, even that will get a stay. And the tenant, basically, if the corporate debtor is a tenant, right? If they have taken a leasehold property, then their owner of the property cannot throw them out, right? The recovery of the property cannot be done where the corporate debtor is in the possession of that particular premise. Do you understand now? So four things happens once the moratorium happens. Now also understand that if there is, okay, if there is a case which is pending before Supreme Court or High Court, moratorium will not have any impact on that. Why? Because the application which is filed at Supreme Court and High Court, right, the writ petitions and all, that is basically under the Constitution. So no law can restrict the rights which have been given or the powers which have been given under the Constitution of India. So this is there for the moratorium. Again, I say this is an important question, that what is moratorium and what is the impact of moratorium. So if you go here in these slides in my ebook, you will get it. I have explained it here, right? So I've explained it here. You'll see. So just see this. I've explained moratorium. So moratorium means suspension of an activity or a legally authorized period of delay or a authorized period of delay. So this is all I picked up from the legal dictionaries, right? The definition I picked up from the legal dictionaries, right? So here moratorium is there. And then again, you also have the judgment. I'll show you. So moratorium will neither affect any suit or a case which is pending before the Supreme Court, nor it will affect the power right of a power, the right affect the power of the High Court to hear the writ petition. Why? Because that power has been given under the Constitution of India, right? So just remember this, right? So this is there. And again, if you see, by the way, whatever I have written here in bold, right? This is for your the language which you can write it in the exam. So just see the same section number 14 that we have studied. You'll see it in a very simple language, like which you say students often say, which is not in the law language, right? So just see, once NCLT admits the application, moratorium period sets in where the creditor cannot take any legal action against the company and all ongoing cases get stayed. So thus the insolvency commencement date, the NCLT shall by order declare moratorium prohibiting these four. Got it? So does this make sense? Does this make sense?
Okay, sir.
Right. So the ebook will help you with this part, because after every section I have given this kind of a guide note, which will be helpful for you. Now, again, if you see, no moratorium will be there on the essential supplies of the corporate debtor, which means there will be no stay on the essentials which is provided to the corporate debtor. So earlier there was no terms and conditions, but now there are terms and conditions. So this is a sort of amendment, and this is the terms of condition, the terms and conditions. What does it say? It says that a license, permit or registration, quota, concession, clearance, or a similar grant which is given by the central government, state government, or local authority, or sorry, not this one, right? So where the interim resolution professional or the resolution professional considers the supply of goods or services critical to protect and preserve the value of the corporate debtor and manage the operations of the corporate debtor such as a going concern, then the supply of such goods shall not be terminated, suspended, or interrupted during the moratorium, except where the corporate debtor has not paid the dues arising from such supply during the moratorium period or in circumstances as may be specified. So what does this mean? So earlier it was that the essentials will not be terminated. Let's say the electricity connection will not be disconnected, the water supply will not be stopped. But now what they have said, that if the interim resolution professional believes that it is essential, the electricity supply should not be stopped. So let's say take example, it's the factory where the production is going on. Now if the electricity is being disconnected, right, because the bills are not paid, then in that case the factory is not going to run, and quite possible the assets are going to get devalued more, because the factory is not in operations, the valuation and everything will go down. So that's where it is going to be the decision, commercial decision of the interim resolution professional, that this electricity is the essential, so this essential should not be disrupted, right? The supply of electricity should not be disrupted. So let the electricity come. Now, earlier, the electricity was supposed to be not to be disrupted, not disconnected. But then at the same time, if you see, the electricity company is not getting the payment. Possibly the electricity company was not getting the payment before the application was made. Right now also electricity company is not getting the payment. Plus, you have provided a section in the law which says that since electricity is essential, the connection should not be disconnected. Now, from the electricity company point of view, it will become bad. So basically the company or the person who is providing the essential will be at loss. So to protect that, they have added this provision and they have said that except where the corporate debtor has not paid the dues arising from such supply during the moratorium period. Okay. So whatever supplies are being made. So before the application was made, whatever dues were there, that is okay. But during the moratorium period, if the electricity is being supplied, please make the payment. So it's possible that you may not have paid your electricity bill for the last 2 years. And today, let's say in April 2021, the application is admitted. Now, if the application is admitted, from now onwards, you'll have to pay the electricity bill. I'm not saying till March 2021, but till April 2021, whatever is your dues, please pay those dues and you'll have to make the payment for that. Guys, do you understand this part? Right? So moratorium on essentials will not be terminated except that for the essentials, the payments will have to be made, right? Also, if any license or any permit, everything, anything which has been given to the corporate debtor, that will not be suspended. That will not be suspended or terminated on the grounds that the CIRP has been commenced, provided that there has been no default in the payment of those fees. So let's say, you know, let's presume if Vodafone or let's say Idea Cellular would have continued, then Idea Cellular would also have got into CIRP. So let's presume there is no Vodafone Idea, it's only Idea Cellular independently working, not able to survive in this stiff competition, and they have defaulted and CRP has commenced. Now their telecom license will not get uh, terminated just because a CIRP has been initiated against Vodafone. One. Secondly, the Vodafone or the resolution professional will have to ensure that the payments with respect to those telecom license or the spectrum fees, whatever it is, that is being paid. Okay. So you need to see these things. Thereafter, if you see, the provision shall not apply to the transactions by the central government in consultation. So this is absolutely fine. And also to the surety of a contract of the corporate debtor. Now, what does this mean? Surety in a contract of guarantee to a corporate debtor. So if you have provided any guarantee, right, then in that case, you have to be, there will be no moratorium. There will be no moratorium on that. And what is going to be the duration of moratorium? From the date when the application is admitted till the date your CIRP process ends, right? Now, if it ends at within 180 days, well and good. Extended time period, well and good. Does not happen. The CIRP does not end well. There is no resolution plan. The company enters into liquidation. So the day company enters into liquidation, the moratorium period will end. Okay. So just remember what is going to be the duration of the moratorium, right? Is this clear? So the order of the moratorium shall have the effect from the date of such order till the completion of the corporate insolvency resolution process, and where at any time during the CRP, if the adjudicating authority approves the resolution plan or passes an order for the liquidation of the corporate debtor, the moratorium shall cease to have effect from the date of such approval or the liquidation order, as the case may be. Okay. Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then you have this public announcement. So just see, public announcement of the corporate insolvency resolution process will be made and it shall contain. So basically this is the content of the public announcement. So it should contain the name and the address of the corporate debtor undergoing CIRP. Also the name of the authority with which the corporate debtor is incorporated. So basically you can say, for example, ROC or whatever. Then the last date for the submission of the claim, details of the interim resolution professional, right? And if any false claim or misleading claims are submitted, what is going to be the penalty? And the date on which the corporate insolvency resolution process shall close. Okay, that is 180th day. So first and foremost, you have to provide that the application was admitted on, let's say, 1st April. So 180 days from 1st April, you will say that on this date, the CRP is going to end, right? And the public announcement shall be made in such manner as may be specified. So here we say you have to refer the regulations, and you'll get the provisions in the slide. I'll show you. I'll write it there. Okay. Now, before we just go ahead, I would like to show you a copy of the public announcement. So just go to the website of IBBI, and here in IBBI, you will find here public announcements, right? So intimation corporate process. Just 1 minute. Not legal framework. Here only corporate process. Public announcements. Yeah. So here any public announcement you can pick up. So today you have, this is the corporate debtor and that's the name of the applicant. So you will get it. Right. So you can pick up any. Okay. So this is the newspaper advertisement that they have made. Okay. Can you see this? Okay. No, you cannot see the new dialog box. Okay. Just check. Isn't it the same? Isn't it the same? So public announcement for the attention of the stakeholders of Messrs. Auto Project Private Limited, corporate debtor, date of incorporation, registered with ROC West Bengal, the CIN number, the address, then closure of this. So 7/4/2021, right? So liquidation commencement date. So this was for the liquidation commencement. Okay, so this was for the liquidation commencement process. But similarly, you will guide for public announcement for liquidation. Okay, so this is for the CIRP. So I can show you this. Yeah. So this is here. Name of the corporate debtor, date of incorporation, right? ROC Delhi, registered office, insolvency commencement date 9th April. Okay. The order was received on 12th April. So 180 days. So just see 6th October, 9th April. So 6th October, that is 180 days. This is the estimated date of the closure of the insolvency resolution process. Now that's the name of the insolvency professional. Okay. Now here you see IPA, IBBI, both you are getting here. The address has been given here. Right here, you need to provide the claims. The last submission of the claims should be done by 26th of April, right? So these are not applicable here, and the relevant forms and everything they have provided. And they say that the creditors of this company are hereby called upon to submit their claims or their proof on or before 26th, right? The financial creditor shall submit their claim with proof of electronic means only. All other creditors may supply by post or by electronic means, right? So this is a criteria which has been set by them. A financial creditor belonging to the not applicable class, that is section 21A, 6A, right, shall indicate the choice of the authorized representative who is going to be there, right? So this is the list. So basically, just see what we have just studied here. It's the same thing which is going to be there, right? So I'll take you back to the slide and I'll write about the public announcement, right? So this is with respect to the public announcement under section 15. So this public announcement, this will be made by this public announcement will be made by
Educating authority.
interim resolution professional. Okay. Adjudicating authority is going to direct the interim resolution professional. Okay. And this should be made immediately. And what do you mean by immediately? Within 3 working days. Okay. From his appointment. Thereafter, this public announcement should be published right. This public announcement should be published in newspapers, 2 newspapers. One English newspaper and another is vernacular language. Okay. Again, vernacular language where the registered office of the corporate debtor is situated. Along with that, it will also be published on the website of the corporate debtor and also at the website of IBBI. We just saw that, correct? Then this public announcement should provide what? The public announcement should provide
Name of corporate debtor.
okay, so that is there in the law. So basically this should provide, must provide the last date for the submission of claim, right?
Okay.
Who is going to bear the expenses of this public announcement?
Corporate debtor.
No,
It's
applicant.
Creditor.
Applicant.
Creditor.
Yes, so basically the applicant. By the applicant itself. Okay. Guys, is this clear?
Yes, sir.
So just remember this. Then let's go back to the BEREC. So here we have appointment and the tenure of the interim resolution professional. Again, this is an important question. So interim resolution professional is going to remain in the company or is going to be in his position from the date of his appointment till the time a resolution professional is not appointed, so which can be either the resolution professional, the interim resolution professional himself or some other person. Okay, guys, clear? So the adjudicating authority shall appoint the interim resolution professional on the insolvency commencement date. So immediately he'll be appointed, and thereafter where the applicant was a corporate debtor or the financial creditor, then there is no problem. The financial creditor or the corporate debtor, they are going to propose the name of the IRP, then it is fine. Where the application is made by the operational creditor and a proposal is made, then straight away the person will be appointed. But if no proposal is made, then in that case, the adjudicating authority will make reference to the board for the recommendation of the insolvency professional who may act as an interim resolution professional, right? Thereafter, the board shall, within 10 days after the receipt of the reference from the adjudicating authority, recommend the name of the interim, basically insolvency professional who is going to act as the interim resolution professional. Now this has got an amendment. Earlier, the term of the interim resolution professional was for a period of 30 days from the date of his appointment. Now they have changed it, and now they have said that shall continue till the date of the appointment of the resolution professional. So if you see here in this ebook, what I have done, I have, so this is again there, I have made the provision, right? But what I have done here, okay, so this is the form numbers and everything I have given. The claim should be submitted within 14 days from the date of his appointment, right? Verification of the claims and everything will be done. Now just see. So earlier it was that the appointment should be done within 14 days from the date of the commencement of CIRP. But now they have made it what? It is basically on the date of the commencement of insolvency. Similarly, earlier it was shall not exceed 30 days from his appointment. But now that has been changed, and now the IRP is going to continue till the date of his appointment under this. So if you read this part, it is going to be again little easier for you. So if you have to write the answer for the appointment of IRP in the examination, you can write it here that the NCLT shall appoint an interim resolution professional within 14 days from the CIRP date. And for the application made by the financial creditors, the resolution professional as proposed must be appointed as the interim resolution professional if there is no disciplinary proceeding which is pending. And if it is made by the operational creditor, then again the process has been given, right? So this is there and the tenure has been provided. Now just see management of the affairs of the corporate by the corporate debtor by the interim resolution professional. So this is a general section, right? So this is basically you can just read. So now the interim resolution professional will take charge of the management of the corporate debtor, and he is going to take care of the company, right? So basically the management of the affairs of the corporate debtor shall vest in the hands of the resolution professional. Okay, then the power of the board of directors and all those things. See, the power of the board of directors shall stand suspended, right? The officer and the manager will all report to the interim resolution professional, right? So basically interim resolution professional will become the head. Then the interim resolution professional can do any actions which is needed. Then again you have the duties of the interim resolution professional. So basically it is his duty to collect all the information, collate all the claims which has been made, and this is most important, he has to constitute the committee of creditors, right? So this provision has been given here. Then section 19, this is something which you can again read it, you can just for your understanding you can read, otherwise there is nothing technical here. It's basically the duty which has been put on the personals of the corporate debtor. So they have been asked that you have to extend your full cooperation to the interim resolution professional. So the law has provided this part. Similarly, the management of the operations of the corporate debtor as going concern. So this is again what you can read. It's basically the interim resolution professional has been made uh, responsible, or see the word that they have used is shall, that the interim resolution professional shall make endeavor to protect and preserve the value of the assets, right? So for this he can do anything whatever he want. He can appoint professionals, he can enter into contract, he can raise interim finance. So if you remember we had discussed the meaning of the interim finance, right? And then issue directions, take necessary steps whatever is needed. Then we have section 21, which is for the committee of creditors. But before we go ahead, tell me till here it is clear? Till here it is clear to all of you?
Yes, sir.
Right now the committee of creditors is going to be formed. So if the committee of creditors is to be formed, this has to be formed by the interim resolution professional. So the interim resolution professional shall, after the collation of all the claims which is received against the corporate debtor and determining the financial position of the corporate debtor, constitute a COC. Then the committee of creditor shall comprise of all the financial creditors of the corporate debtor, provided that the financial creditor or the authorized representative of the financial creditor in subsection 6 or subsection 6a or subsection 5 of section 24 if is a related party. So where the financial creditor is a related party of the corporate debtor, that financial creditor shall have no right of representation, participation, or voting in the committee of creditors. So if you are a related party, there is no use. Okay, guys, this is clear. The related party. So a financial creditor who is also a related party to the corporate debtor will have no say in the committee of creditors. Okay. Thereafter, provided that the first proviso shall not
Sir,
apply. Yes.
that related party will be the part of the committee of creditor, but he can't vote.
No,
ऐसे
if you see, will have no right to representation, participation, or voting. So technically, there will be no use.
okay.
Right. Then you have another proviso which says that provided further that the first proviso shall not apply to the financial creditor is regulated by the financial sector regulator if it is a related party to the corporate debtor solely on account of the conversion or substitution of debt into equity. Now just see, let's say bank, right? I'm giving you an example of a bank. Bank had given loan. Bank had given loan to the holding company also. Bank had given loan to the subsidiary company also. Okay. So basically bank is financial creditor for both holding as well as the subsidiary company. Correct. Now let's say the subsidiary company, the loan given to subsidiary company is now converted. Right. And now this is converted into equity, which has resulted in control. Right. Now basically bank has control or bank has substantial stake, or let's say the bank has substantial stake, or let's say here I say the holding company, here bank has got the control. And why bank has got the control? Because of the conversion of debt into equity. Guys, got it?
Yes, sir.
Let me just, okay, let me just make it in the slide only. So refer slide. So take it this way. Let's say SBI, right? The SBI has given loan to H Limited, right? And this loan is now converted into equity. The loan is converted into equity, okay? Which has again resulted in control with SBI. Quite possible. The debt was so huge that when that loan was converted into equity, it became, it resulted in more than 50%. Got it? The equity constitutes, let's say, 58%, for example, which gives control to SBI. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Now, this happened. So this was step one, step two. Now, third step, this holding company, this H Limited, also has a company, let's say S Limited. Now, H Limited, let's say, controls S Limited. Now, SBI has also given loan to S Limited. Right. Now, S Limited is undergoing CIRP. Now, tell me one thing. Can you say SBI is a related party? Because technically, if you see, SBI is controlling this S Limited. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
So SBI is a related party? Yes. But can SBI participate? Can SBI become the member of COC?
No.
Yes. Read this. Read this part. From here till here. Read this part. What does it say? Provided further that the first proviso, which disallows, okay, shall not apply to the financial creditor who is regulated by financial sector regulator. So you have Reserve Bank of India, okay, and if the related party, the financial creditor is a related party to the corporate debtor solely on account of conversion or substitution of debt into equity shares, okay, prior to the insolvency commencement date. Got it?
सर
Yes,
जो कन्वर्शन होगा वो प्रायर टू द इंसॉल्वेंसी कमेंसमेंट डेट के
of
पहले होगा.
course, of course. Now, if the so technically, if you see prior to the insolvency commencement date, even if this word was not there, still it would be prior only, because once the CIRP has begun, moratorium is applied. Now, if moratorium is applied, you cannot do anything with the debt or equity. You cannot do the conversion. Okay. Guys, clear?
सर
Yes.
जो मॉरेटोरियम लगेगा वो तो एस लिमिटेड पे लगेगा ना, एच लिमिटेड में भी लगेगा.
हाँ, ऑफ कोर्स एच लिमिटेड पे मोराटोरियम नहीं लगेगा, वहां पे ये प्रायर वर्ड काम आ जाएगा.
क्योंकि
करेक्ट.
क्योंकि जो भी हो रहा है कन्वर्शन वो तो एच लिमिटेड के थ्रू हो रहा है ना.
Correct. Correct. Absolutely. Absolutely correct. There it is going to be H limited. Valid. Valid point. बिल्कुल correct है ये. This is fine.
ओके सर.
All right. Let's see. Now, subject to section 6 and 6A, where the corporate debtor owes financial debt to two or more financial creditor as a part of the consortium or the agreement, each financial creditor shall be part of the committee to the voting share as determined on the basis of the financial debt owed to them. Again, let's refer to the slide. So if I say, let's presume there are 5 financial creditors, A, B, C. Now D and E have collectively given the loan. Okay. So financial creditor, let's say 500 rupees, 700, written 7,000, 700 rupees. Then I say, let's say C, 600 rupees. Okay. And E, let's say 2200 rupees. This is clear. So what is the total? Can someone do the total for this? And just randomly written the number. So this is 1300, 13 plus 5, 1800, 4000, correct?
यस.
So this is 4000. Now just understand what D and E both have provided. This is called as the consortium. Okay. This is called as the consortium loan, where a large loan has been extended by two creditors and not one creditor. Okay. Okay. Now, what will be the voting share? So technically, if you see, A will have the voting share of 500 out of 4000, correct? B will have a voting share of 700 out of 4000. C will have a voting share of 600 out of 4000. Now, what about D and what about E? So you'll have to see what percentage of loan out of this 1200, what was extended by D and what was extended by E. So let's presume this 2200 loan, 1200 was extended by D and 1000 was extended by E. So what will be the voting rate? So this is for A, this is for B, this is for C. What will be the voting right for D? D will have a voting right of 1200 out of 4000 and E is going to have a voting of 1000 out of 4000. Make sense? Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Just read this. Just read this again.
Okay.
Correct? Same thing. Now here it is what Astaji you had asked at the beginning of the lecture. What if the person is financial, operational, or what if the transfer is being done? So just see where a person is both financial as well as the operational creditor, then only the debt of the or basically only the financial debt will be taken into consideration when we see that person in the committee of creditors. You will not see the operational debt. Of course, the operational debt will be paid, but as far as the voting right is concerned, you will only take into consideration the financial debt, right? So where a person is a financial creditor as well as an operational creditor, such person shall be financial creditor to the extent of the financial debt which is owed by the corporate debtor and shall include in the committee of creditor with the voting share proportionate to the extent of financial debt only. And the other part, such person will be considered as the operational creditor to the extent of operational debt. So clearly the operational and the financial debt has been segregated. Okay.
Okay, sir.
This is your point, exactly what you had asked, where an operational creditor has assigned or legally transferred any operational debt to the financial creditor. Just understand the assignee or the transferee will be considered as the operational creditor to the extent of such transfer. So a financial creditor, let's say, owes 200, operational creditor owes 500. So suddenly you cannot say this financial creditor now has 700 rupees debt, which is financial. You will still say the person owes 700, no doubt, but that 700 bifurcation will be given. That is 200 and 500. Okay, right?
Okay.
All right. Then you see where the terms of the financial debt are extended as a part of consortium or a syndicate facility which provides for a single trustee or a agent to act on all behalf of the financial creditor. Then each financial creditor will authorize a trustee or the agent on behalf of the committee of creditor to extend for his voting share, represent himself in the committee of creditor to the extent of his voting share, and appoint an insolvency professional at the cost. So basically at the same cost and exercise the voting right to the extent. And same thing you will see here. Just see, first and foremost, just see this part. We just saw D and E. Now let's presume, if you see, let's presume A plus B plus C plus D. This is again what? This is again the consortium of loan. Now A can appoint a interim, not interim. A can appoint a insolvency professional, okay, who is going to represent A. B can appoint another interim professional who is going to act as B. C is going to appoint another interim professional who is going to represent for C. D is going to appoint another interim professional who is going to represent for D. Or they can have collectively one person who is going to represent all of them. Okay, so I'll change the name of the person and I'll write here. Let's say you can have P. P is going to represent all four. Got it? Guys,
Okay,
clear?
sir.
Guys, clear? P is now representing all. But the voting instructions, everything will be as per respectively. So that individuality will be there. That how we had discussed in the previous slide. This calculation will still continue, right? No doubt the consortium is for 2200, but the internal bifurcation will be still there. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Now see, next that you have, where a financial debt is in the form of securities or deposits, in the term of the financial debt provide for the appointment of the trustee, agent, or the authorized representative. Now just see what is the difference between 6 and 6a. 6 was a consortium of loan. Okay, if you see, 6 was the 6 was the consortium arrangement. It was the consortium of loan. I'll highlight it. 6 was the consortium arrangement or a syndicate facility. Basically, this was the loan. But if you see 6a, this is in the form of securities. Okay. Now, if I say it is in the form of securities, this means, let's say, the debenture holders. Got it? Technically, can you say debenture holders have collectively given the loan? So all debenture holders are financial creditors, because at the end of the day, the claim of the debenture holders is what? It is a financial debt only. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
So here again, the provision is for them. So they can also provide for the appointment of the trustee or the authorized representative for all such financial creditors. Just see, for all such financial creditors. Okay, who will act on behalf of all the financial creditors. This is given there. Also, you have to ensure that such person should not be the interim resolution professional. Like they cannot appoint the interim resolution professional. All this you can ignore, but just understand this part. Guys, this is clear. Guys, this is clear. 6a, 21.6 and 21.6a. Is
सर
this
6A एक बारी वापस repeat.
6a is basically the financial creditors, okay, who are holding the securities. Financial creditors who are holding the securities,
Okay.
right? Who are holding the securities. Simple, right? Just see, the financial debt is in the form of securities. So you can say, for example, debentures. You can say bond, right? Here you will get this. So here the application, right? Basically what they are saying, that not exceeding such number as may be specified. So this is 10%. This is basically 10% of such financial creditor. So this part you can ignore as of now. Now, from where will the remuneration be paid to this authorized representative? So it will be paid by the person to whom they are representing. Like I said, so basically insolvency professional who is representing A, the debts will be paid by A, the remuneration will be paid by A. Okay, so this is a twist which has been they have made here. Then the board may specify the manner in the voting in respect of the financial debts which are covered in 6 and 6a. Is there? Now just read this. Save as provided in this code, all the decisions of the committee of creditors shall be taken by a vote of not less than 51%. So 51% is the voting which will be needed, right? Approval which will be needed for the COC to pass any resolution, except something else is provided. Like I said, for extension, it is what? 66%. Approval of the resolution plan, it is again 66%. Then if you want to replace the resolution professional, it is 66%. If you want to withdraw, then it is 90%. Yes or no? So wherever 66, 90, some other percentage is given, it is fine. But otherwise, wherever it is given that you need to take the approval of the committee of creditors, it will be what? It will be 51% only. Okay.
Earlier it was
75.
different. Okay.
Earlier it was 75 flat throughout. Anything you want to do, any decision COC has to take, it was 75%. Whether it was approval of the resolution plan or the removal or the replacement, everything was 75%. Or for the extension, it was all 75%. Okay.
Okay.
Now this says that where the corporate debtor does not have any financial creditor, then the financial. So this can be an important question. For this, refer the ebook. Okay. So it says that, so you have subsection 2 where it says that the committee of creditor will comprise all with all the financial creditors. Now you have a situation where I say, what if there is no financial creditor? There is no financial creditor in the company, then what is going to happen? So in that case, if there is no financial creditor in the company, then the 18 largest operational creditor, they will form the committee of creditors. So this is there. So I'll write it here. Ebook, page number 35. If there is no financial debt, or let's say all the financial creditors are related party, then the committee of creditor will be formed by the 18 largest operational creditor, one representative of the workman, one representative of the employee. Now, if let's say there are not 18, there are only 7 operational creditors. So those 7 people will become the committee of creditors. So if you read this part, you will be able to cover it properly, right? The entire committee of creditors, at least for your academic point of view, this has been made precise that IRP shall constitute the COC. The COC will comprise of all the financial creditors. All decisions will taken by 51% of the voting share. So just understand 75 it was before, now it has been replaced. The related party of the corporate debtor will not be getting any right to participation in the COC, right? And then it was said that a debt which has been transferred from a related party to a non-related party will not be considered as non-related party. It will still be considered as a debt for a related party. In the similar way, if the operational creditor transfers the debt to the financial creditor, the debt will be still considered as operational only. Okay, guys, this is clear. Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Then the appointment of the resolution professional. So in the first meeting of the committee of creditor, either the resolution professional will be, okay, either the operational creditor, either the interim resolution professional will be approved as the resolution professional, will be appointed as a resolution professional, or the committee of creditor will decide that no, we need to replace. So the committee of creditor in the first meeting, by voting of 66%, they may appoint the IRP as RP, or if they want, they can replace the IRP with another resolution professional. Okay. Also, you have subsection 3 which says that till the time, so basically if you want to continue the interim resolution professional, please get a consent from them. So just see this. Yes, this one. So you're appointing the IP as IRP. So when you appoint the IP as IRP, you need to obtain the consent that IP is ready to act as the IRP. Now, when you appoint IRP as RP, again take a consent that the person is ready to act as RP. Even though the same person is appointed as the liquidator, again you need to take the consent that the person is ready to become the liquidator. So consent is needed at every stage. Okay. So
It's written consent, no, sir?
yes, the written consent. So same thing is given here, that where the committee of creditors. So this is also an amendment, 2018 amendment. Okay. So just see this. 2 and this is 2. So 6th June 2016. 2018. I'll never forget this day because 5th June I had actually completed. I had made this ebook I had made and I had finished everything. And on 6th June, we had the amendments and they're like major amendments. So again, I had to redo my work. So that's the reason I remember all these amendments, because these amendments not just got changed the law, but they also got, I had to change my ebook and it was very, very irritating because I actually took some 15 days break to finish this compilation, and then all of a sudden the laws were changed. A lot of amendments were there, right? Anyway, so again, the written consent is to be obtained from the interim resolution professional that the person is ready to act as the IRP, or if you plan to replace the IRP, then you'll have to file the application to the NCLT for the appointment of the person to be appointed as the RP, along with the written consent from the proposed RP that the person is ready to act as a resolution professional. Thereafter, the NCLT is going to make the proposal, whatever the proposal is there, forward the name to the IBBI for its confirmation. And after the confirmation is received, IRP, basically the IP will be appointed as the RP. Okay. And where the board does not confirm within 10 days, then it is there that the interim resolution professional is going to continue. So it's not that if the board does not provide for the name within 10 days, or if the board IBBI do not confirm within 10 days, it doesn't mean that the person can be now appointed as the RP. The interim resolution professional is going to continue to function until such name is confirmed by the IBBI. Guys, is this clear? Guys, is this clear?
Yes.
Guys, is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now you have section 23. So section 23 is basically that the resolution professional is going to conduct the entire CIRP process, right? And the RP is now going to continue to manage the operations of the corporate debtor, right? Including the approval of the resolution plan and all those things. And after that, whatever the resolution professional shall exercise all such powers and the duties which have been given under this chapter. This is all basic points. So till here we have covered, and from tomorrow we'll start with section number 24. Please study whatever we have covered today. Tomorrow again we'll start with how we started today's lecture and yesterday's lecture. We will briefly discuss whatever we have studied till now, and then we will go ahead with the provisions. Okay.
Okay, sir.
So please revise, and I'm very sure that this will help you to remember the provisions also. Like you must have experienced in today's lecture also and yesterday's lecture that you were able to do the revision. You were able to remember those points. Like when we did this slide, you were able to remember. So technically, if you see, once we study in the class, like what today's topic from section 13 till 23, we have studied today in the class. Now you will revise it before my lecture. Then tomorrow when we will start, we will again do a revision. And then obviously once the IBC is covered, we will again do a revision. So 4 times we have already studied the same chapter in the class. So after that, I'm very sure you'll be able to remember the core points. And when the exam is being in exam, when the question is being asked, you'll be able to write it well, right? So
Yes, sir.
take care. Bye bye.
सर
Yes.
सर जैसे कोई कॉर्पोरेट डेटर है और उसके CIRP चालू हो गई है, क्या
हाँ.
वो और किसी के अगेंस्ट CIRP चालू कर सकता है?
तो कॉर्पोरेट डेटर जिसके अगेंस्ट सीआरपी चालू हो गया है, नहीं वो नहीं कर पाएगा.
नहीं, वो किसी और के अगेंस्ट
नहीं कर पाएगा.
नहीं ना?
नहीं कर पाएगा. Section 11. A corporate debtor undergoing CIRP cannot file the application. Okay.
ओके सर.
All right
Okay,
then.
sir.
Take care. Bye bye. I'll upload the slide today. I'll sync. I'll not forget like yesterday. Right. Take care. Bye
Okay,
bye.
sir.